In the Aftermath was produced by Roger Corman's company New World Pictures. It was written and directed by Carl Colpert, and it was made primarily to make use of the 1985 OVA Angel's Egg, which was written and directed by Mamoru Oshii from a concept by himself and artist Yoshitaka Amano, famous for his artwork for Vampire Hunter D and Final Fantasy, among others. New World Pictures acquired Angel's Egg for very little money as part of a distribution bundle. Producer Tom Dugan and Carl Colpert found the film incomprehensible and opted to make live-action footage with new dialogue for the animated sequences to make some sense of it. They were able to get away with this due to the VHS boom that occurred in the 80s.
You have to keep in mind what was happening at the time. This is right when VHS machines came out, right? And back then, I swear to God, you could sell your film by the pound. It's like everybody was buying VHS machines. Everybody had to go out and have 3 VHS machines. Blockbusters opened up. There were, people would go, they buy a VHS. Well, I need movies to play on it, not even to rent, just to own so I can throw them in there in the beginning. So there was this huge demand. And I mean, you literally, if you had a film that was on VHS and you could put it on a scale, you could sell it. And that was true. And you would go to the foreign film festivals, whether it be Cannes or MIFED and American Film Market, and you'd sell the film. And there were people buying because VHS sales were exploding across the globe. I don't ever believe that they intended for this to be a theatrical release. That's why I think at that time there were so many opportunities to make movies, because there were people that needed product. And that changed very quickly after a while. Even though the independent film niche has remained, that was an excellent time, because if you could get a movie made, you would be able to sell it and make another one.
Now, I need to make something clear before I begin. This video comparing both movies isn't really going to be a deep dive into the deep meanings of the movie Angel's Egg, because I don't know what it's about. Like Eraserhead, which this film is often compared to, you're here more for the visual, audio, and perhaps even musical experience rather than a full story. It's clear from the final product that Oshii never intended to make this one with a full story. In fact, there really isn't a story at all. It's about a little girl in a desolate, dark city carrying an egg with her at all times, looking for food and filling bottles of water. She encounters a man who wonders about the egg, they have discussions about things, and strange things occur. That's it. And for reasons I will get into later, when rewatching this movie for this video, I found that I no longer love this movie as much as I used to. So in order to begin talking about Angel's Egg for this compare and contrast, I feel I need to do so through In the Aftermath. Why not? There are many out there that first encountered Angel's Egg through this film, but that was not the case with me. I heard about Angel's Egg reading Carl Gustav Horn's essay that came with the Bandai Entertainment DVD of Jinro. Copies of the movie were hard to find in the late 2000s, so I had to buy a bootleg. The first thing I noticed in the opening credits of In the Aftermath was that the screenplay for this movie was by Carl Colpert and Mamoru Oshii, which I'm sorry, I have to call bullshit. Oshii had no hand in writing the screenplay at all. Around this time, Oshii was making the Red Spectacles, and not too long after that, he would begin work on Patlabor. In the Aftermath opens to the orb with all the statues on it floating down on a desolate landscape. This film makes it look like the girl, who In the Aftermath calls Angel, wakes up to see it land, but in Angel's Egg she simply wakes up after it lands and observes the landscape. She then wraps up the egg, gets dressed, and heads out into the desolate city from what looks like Noah's Ark, or something like it. She does some wanderings in the forest, and in the city she eventually comes across a bitchin' row of tanks where she eventually meets the mysterious man. After waking up in the Aftermath, Angel immediately heads out to the tanks to meet her brother, who this movie calls Jonathan.
Because my brother, he had plenty of advice for me. And I didn't want to hear it.
They are siblings in this film, but they are strangers in Angel's Egg. After meeting the man in Angel's Egg, the girl searches some abandoned houses a bit more for supplies. She later comes across the man again after she leaves the egg unattended, but the man gives it back to her. Now, this is all the dialogue for that scene in Angel's Egg.
大切なものはお腹の中に入れておかなければなくしてしまうよ。その卵の中には何が入ってるのかな？
そんなこと教えられないわ。だって私、あなたを知らないもの。
卵は割ってみなければその中に何が入っているのかわからないものだよ。
In the Aftermath has to reuse footage from this repeatedly to make some story about how carrying an egg is her sacred duty to save special creatures, something her brother has to remind her of. But in Angel's Egg, the egg was something special only to the girl. but the man was curious about it.
Because, Angel, it is time for you to run. Run through the many rooms of this constellation you're standing in. Find and save a group of special creatures and the lair that they live in.
But if they have sharp fangs and want to bite me?
But it is the duty of all angels to be angels. Angel, we do fly in the face of all peril. You'll need to judge who needs your help and who shouldn't have it. Save only those creatures who will blossom from your energy.
Then Angel walks away from Jonathan with angel feathers floating all about her, which is where we cut to the live action footage. We see two guys searching around in the post-apocalypse. As to what happened is unclear, but the air is contaminated, and being in it too long is deadly. These guys are Frank and Goose. They are searching for clean water and air, but after some time searching, Frank runs into a crazed soldier, gets the crap beat out of him and gets his gear stolen. Goose is also killed by this guy. Frank wakes up to find Goose dead and drags his body back into the facility where he was beat up. Inside, however, he sees an animation cell that could be worth up to a couple $1,000s on eBay. It then transforms into a live-action little girl. Now, to the movie's credit, they did do a fairly good job recreating the outfit.
This creature staggered with dizzy thoughts. I'm sorry he had to drag his bones after me, but I didn't know what to do. I held everything he desired, but I was wary of evil grabbing hold of it. I tested him with a sign, and he fell from confusion.
The film then cuts back to Angel in the desolate city, where the movie makes pretty extensive use of the Angel's Egg footage, where she narrates how she had to make use of what she could find in the gray world. What this actually means is that Angel's Egg was what New World Pictures had that had the highest production value, and damn it, they were going to use it. The live-action portion of In the Aftermath was filmed at the abandoned Kaiser Mill in Fontana, California. That location has been used a lot. In fact, actor Tony Marks, who played Frank, stated that there was another movie being filmed there while they were making In the Aftermath, and related a funny story.
While we were out there shooting at this place, it kind of, after the second or third day, and it's like the place itself was just toxic. It was like, no joke, I really thought that it might not be safe to be out there. I'd be curious to know if they ever took a Geiger counter out there and checked before we acted out there. And then I remember someone said, hey, they're shooting this other picture around the corner while we were there. So it was like a lunch break or something. It's like, let's go over there. So we go around the corner, and again, this is like post-apocalyptic, this huge set, end of the world Terminator style. And we went out there, and it was like a direct-to-video B skin flick with all of these like girl motorcyclists. And I got over there and go, okay, so we're not shooting the worst movie. Then we can go back now. That's all.
When he wakes up, he sees he is in quarantine where Dr. Sarah Fallsburg is treating him. But enough about that, let's go to the actual interesting footage. Angel seems to want to help Frank in that world, and she goes to consult Jonathan. He then relates to her a story of somebody called Tesserae. Tesserae was an interstellar traveler who went to many worlds, and people were eager to hear his stories.
There was a most unusual planet, and on this planet, fish flew in the air and performed dazzling feats of acrobatics. They used clouds for trampolines. They were as big as whales. These fish were never seen anywhere else.
People begged to be taken there, but he couldn't trust any of them due to their evil motives, so he took no one. But then one day, a man got him drunk and stole his star chart.
The evil man rushed to the planet. With his ropes and hooks, he pulled all the fish off the planet. If you put your ear to the heavens and listen for the sound of a man crying, that is Tesserae sitting alone on a planet with no fish.
But in Angel's Egg, the man relates to the girl the story of Noah's Ark, or at least a different version of it. In that version, none of the birds they released to see if there was any dry ground ever returned. Eventually, the people forgot they ever released a bird, and forgot there ever was a bird. And it also seemed that the rain just never stopped. It was that way for so long that the animals turned to stone.
君も僕もあの魚たちのようにとっくにいなくなってしまった人たちの記憶でしかなくて、本当は誰もいない世界に雨が降っているだけなのかもしれないんだ。
That is one thing about the man character. In the Aftermath, the man gives Angel plenty of advice and even encouragement, but in Angel's Egg, he's pretty much the opposite, telling her that the sounds she hears from the egg are illusions. Do you see what I mean that Oshii's credit on In the Aftermath is bullshit? The writing is very different. Apparently, the original title of this thing was Aquatic City, but Studio Ghibli producer Toshio Suzuki suggested the title Angel's Egg. Jonathan warns that Frank could possibly have bad motives. If she gave him the egg, then he could end up hunting the fish to extinction, as in the tale of Tesserae, as it were. We then see the group of fishermen chasing the shadow fish, thinking him to be the long-lost acrobatic fish? Maybe? In Angel's Egg, the fishermen could be seen as men searching for Christ, but either not having the right way to get at it, or it's just a thing that remains elusive to them no matter how hard they try. The reaction Jonathan has here is him reacting to the hunt, but in Angel's Egg, the man is reacting to the angel fossil that the girl shows him. There are other things that are just flat out removed from in the aftermath, such as the man seeing a large tree image in stone, and him recalling seeing a tree with a sleeping bird in an egg atop it. So long ago he can't remember if it was even real or not.
Who's the girl? I thought I saw her running around in San Pedro. She was carrying a giant egg in her hand. I know it sounds crazy.
Then Frank plays the piano, recalling old times with a lost love. This is supposed to, I think, show Angel that Frank is the one that can be trusted with her egg? Maybe? This makes Sarah emotional. Angel is put to bed and the city floods. Jonathan then breaks the egg to teach her a lesson not to be neglectful about her duties and not to sleep. He conveniently has another one for her.
Angel, you are the fairy of second chances, and you failed. But don't despair, for I am a fairy of second chances too.
In Angel's Egg, the man breaks the egg to show the girl that there was nothing inside it after all. She goes to look for the man but falls into the water and dies, but not before releasing air to show more eggs popping out of the water, and along with it, birds and trees inside their own eggs. Okay, Frank goes out to look for supplies, I think, and after throwing a fit, he encounters Angel, who does give him the egg.
I came from far away to bring you this from another world. I need not explain. You wouldn't believe me anyway.
I can believe this mess. I can believe anything.
Jonathan then leaves Angel. This version has her accidentally falling into water, I think. It also shows her releasing air, which has more eggs pop up on the surface. Later, we see the orb rise up to show Angel being immortalized among the saints because she completed her duty? Okay. In Angel's Egg, the ending seems to imply something different. The orb rises and we see her among the statues, immortalized with the saintly statues. Is it because he helped free her from that desolate world? Has she been rewarded for what faith she had, and is he being punished for what he did to her? It could be that or many, many other things. You figure it out. In the Aftermath ends with a blue light shooting up in the sky, which cleans the air, I think, and all is seemingly better for Earth. Finally concluded with a bit at the beginning of Angel's Egg, with the bird in the egg in the tree. In Angel's Egg, the way it goes in on the bird then cutting to the man may suggest that this is all in the bird's dream? Maybe. Angel's Egg ends with the camera pulling out to show the desolate land alone in an endless sea. Very similar to the ending of Andrei Tarkovsky's Solaris. Chris Kelvin goes home to embrace his father, but we pull out only to see that his home is some sort of recreation in the Solaris Ocean. Upon release on December 15, 1985, by Oshii's own admission, it was not a success, and over time it fell into obscurity. But thanks to the internet, it has had a ton of renewed appreciation, and to this day, it has its admirers from Shoji Kawamori, Haruhiko Mikimoto, Yoshikazu Yasuhiko, and plenty of others. It still has its detractors though, one of whom being Hayao Miyazaki. He stated that while he appreciated the effort, he didn't think others would get it, and felt that Oshii goes off on a one-way journey without thinking about how to get back. Oshii recalled his own mother not liking it. Apparently after finishing the film, she told him that no one would ever watch his movies again. Now, as I stated before, rewatching this film for this video, I discovered I don't love this film anymore. Why is that? Well, it's a bit complicated. Angel's Egg feels like Oshii took one of his dreams and put it to ink and paint. He put into it many things that interested him, such as ruins, which he said he often dreamed about, museums, fish, birds, military equipment such as tanks, water, and others. All of those things would be reused in one fashion or another in his later works. I also think he wanted to make a film about a child alone in a desolate city, looking around and thinking about stuff.
それでまあその山手線って循環線だから乗ってる間だからぐるぐる回ってるわけだけど、何考えてたかっていうとね、大体ね世界中からね、いつも同じこと考えてまして、世界中から人間がいなくなっちゃう話で、誰もいない街で一人で暮らす話ですね。そういうことを想像して、どこに寝ようかとかね、どこに行ってどんなものを持ってきちゃおうかとかね、非常にこう楽しかったです。でそれは後でやっぱ映画にしましたけどね。
It feels like a big mixture of his concerns and interests at the time were put into a blender, with Yoshitaka Amano molding it with his art style. And this film was the result. It all looks amazingly realized, but it all feels aimless and hollow to me, with dialogue that is as sparse as it is cryptic. Watching this, I don't even have the beginnings of what he was going for, if he was even going for anything at all. This feels like the kind of film where if I have to watch it 15 to 20 times for it to take hold in me to get even the faintest idea of what's going on or what it is, then that's one that isn't quite worth my time. Don't get me wrong, I love me some movies where hardly anything is answered. 2001: A Space Odyssey, The Double Life of Veronique, one of my favorite movies ever by the way, and even Eraserhead are fantastic. I can watch those again and again and walk away not knowing what they're about, and I'm okay with that. So why am I not okay with it in Angel's Egg? Well, the best way I can describe it is this. The three previous films I mentioned have a strangeness to them that is somehow inviting, somehow intriguing. They give you enough to chew on, as it were, without explaining everything or even anything. And there are things you can revisit which don't feel totally exclusive to the creator. Okay, Eraserhead is a personal film of Lynch's, but he wisely never talked about what any of what happens in that film means, so one can still make of it what they will. Angel's Egg for me just feels ice cold and completely impenetrable by comparison. With a lack of any kind of story to give it an anchor, 2001 had the whole thing with the monolith and even Eraserhead had the thing with the baby, I feel like I'm at arm's length the whole time. I didn't care about or was interested in anything I was seeing. The characters are, well, hardly anything. I felt nothing for them, as Oshii admitted when talking about Urusei Yatsura Beautiful Dreamer that he favored structure over characters and story. Beautiful Dreamer may have had some problems as an entertainment piece, because I prioritized the structure over the characters. In that way, it's a kind of movie that a producer normally wouldn't allow. In animation in particular, how appealing the characters are is the most important. Well, in Hollywood movies too. The characters come first, and the story is secondary. Then you have the worldview. That's the order of importance. I made Beautiful Dreamer in reverse. You have the world, this world with a special structure, then you have the story, and the characters come last. Thinking about the movie in and of itself, I don't think this was the wrong decision. It was a spin-off of a long-established series, which is why Beautiful Dreamer was greenlit in the first place. The characters were already established, so what happens if you try that with a standalone 90-minute movie? That was Angel's Egg. I made that movie the same way, but the characters were all original, characters you'd never seen before. As a result, you can't empathize with the characters. You simply can't. A minority of film lovers can appreciate it, but normal viewers just don't know what kind of movie it is. If you are aiming for entertainment, the standard way of making anime is correct. First you have the characters, then the story, and finally the worldview. But if you stand on the side of filmmaking, it all becomes backwards. That's the case of a series spin-off. The characters are already established, and the viewers already know them. For a movie like that, it works. However, if you attempt to do the same thing when you're making a movie starting from scratch, the audience gets confused and you end up with something nobody understands. I admit I didn't truly consider that at the time. I was pure momentum. I was full of myself. Plenty have suggested that this film was about Oshii's loss of faith in Christianity. Well, he never actually converted to Christianity, but admitted in an An America interview with Carl Gustav Horn in February 1996 that he was not a Christian, but the Bible interested him for its philosophies, and he had been reading it since his student days. Why else would he take ideas and verses from it frequently in his later works? I don't know if he still does read it today, but whatever. Sure, it's easy to see why people would read into it how Oshii lost faith in Christianity, if he had any real faith to begin with outside of his academic interest in the Bible. But Yoshitaka Amano had a different idea. When he was asked about how much of the film was his and how much of it was Oshii's, Amano answered, "It was really Oshii's project. I'm not sure if I should talk about this, but at the time Oshii was getting divorced and he had a daughter he couldn't see. So he felt that he was creating some unhappy memories and unhappy times for his daughter, and perhaps that experience resulted in Angel's Egg. But that's something I heard well after the fact. Angel's Egg is a your results may vary movie, where if you don't know a lot about movies, you won't get a lot out of it. There's a film called The Spirit of the Beehive that influenced it, with its stories of Frankenstein's monster and a soldier and two children. You're more likely to appreciate everything as a gestalt if you have an appreciation for movies than if you just watch it dry. Now, I do not hate Angel's Egg. I cannot call it bad. It's not even remotely. It is very well made with a heavy atmosphere of dread and a haunting score by Yoshihiro Kano. It's the kind of work that I have admiration for, but not really any love or liking, if that makes sense. The older I get, the more convinced I am that Oshii's very best work is when he is collaborating with others, or when he's working within the limits of a pre-established property. With some exceptions, when he writes and directs things by himself, he has a tendency to disappear up his own rear end. Patlabor, Ghost in the Shell and Ghost in the Shell 2 Innocence, Urusei Yatsura, particularly Beautiful Dreamer, Avalon, and the Skycrawlers are good because he made what he wished there, but there were others to give him a hand to make sure things didn't go too far south, such as with Stray Dog, Assault Girls, or Garmor's The Last Druid, which, those were just bad. Yes, Jinro was from his own Kerberos saga, but that was directed by Hiroyuki Okiura, who had his own demands for the film. If you're an Oshii fan or an anime fan at all, you need to see this at least once, just so you can say you have and so you can see what this is all about. You may walk away from this appreciating it more than I did. I will say though, I really did feel bummed that I didn't like this movie as much as I used to. That happens. As for In the Aftermath, the biggest reaction I had after watching it was, well, that was stupid. I just don't know who this was supposed to appeal to. There isn't enough action or exploitive elements to appeal to those who enjoy post-apocalypse films, or just direct-to-video schlock in general. And the artsy, meaningful elements certainly won't appeal to the art house crowd, as it all comes across as too simplistic. The live-action footage, while well shot in certain areas, feels like an afterthought. There's no real narrative drive either. Aside from that tense part where Frank gets his gear stolen and his friend gets killed, nothing of any real consequence happens. There's no compelling drama, and thus it's up to the Angel's Egg footage to really carry this whole thing. If this thing actually made money, then congratulations, I suppose. I guess it has enough of a following to warrant an Arrow video release, so again, congratulations. I suppose you can watch it if you're curious. It is a unique piece of work. I'm being generous. What do you want?